Alright. Hello, I'm Deadhead, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Verstappen's defensive move on Hamilton in last week's Sao Paulo Grand Prix. There was a lot of focus on Verstappen's steering angle with the relevant footage not being available at the time. So a lot of people have been asking, of course, did he open the steering wheel or not? Did he push Hamilton wide? Did he open the steering wheel? Um, well, yesterday F1 released Max's onboard footage in their radio rewind show, so now we're able to see the footage and talk about it. So I've got the footage right here. I've slowed it down a little bit, so let's have a look. So we're already in the braking zone here, and what we're seeing is both drivers are going to start easing off the brakes, both trying to stay ahead of the other, trying to own the corner as they go in. So they're coming in here, they're braking there. You see the turning angle start to go in, and Max is now starting to turn toward the apex. So he gets about the closest, right about there or so, and you can see he's several feet wide of the apex already. He's just not making this apex. He's not like crazy wide, but you'd want to be a lot closer than that for sure. But from here, of course, since we're expecting that Verstappen open the steering wheel to push Hamilton wide, is we're going to see as he passes the apex, we're going to see Verstappen let out some steering angle and straighten the wheel a little bit to try and push Hamilton off the road. So let's go ahead and see if that happens here. No, he's steering a lot more, like a lot more. Oh look, now he's steering even more. Like this is a lot of steering angle in a Formula One car. I mean, it's not quite full; it's like half. But so yeah, as he gets out of the apex, he actually steers more than as he's approaching it. So you can see there's about the max steering angle he achieves, and he gets that well after the apex that he misses. So this is about his steering going in, and then as he passes, you can see the steering wheel gets tighter and tighter and tighter. So he's definitely not opening the steering wheel and pushing Hamilton wide. So is he totally innocent? Is that what that means? Well, let's have a look at a couple other things. So the first thing you need to understand is that this idea that the steering angle reveals whether or not Verstappen pushed Hamilton wide or not, it's just wrong. There's plenty of good reasons why you might open steering angle while going through a turn that don't involve pushing somebody wide. And on the other hand, there's plenty of ways to push someone wide without making it really obvious by opening up the steering wheel. So we need a bit more nuance than that. Steering angle alone is just not going to give us the answer. So just as an example, if you were to go into this corner with a lot more speed than normal, that's naturally going to widen your turning circle, and you're going to go through the turn wider without really making any obvious differences to the steering input. So is that what happened? So this is the same turn. This is a lap or two, maybe 3 laps before. So what we want to do here is actually compare. What we need to do is compare this turn with the other turn to kind of get some ideas of what's going on. So this is slow motion again. Let's have a look at what happens. You can see he's turning and getting more and more and more steering. And so this right here, so now he's right at the apex of the corner. And if you remember the steering angle that he had in the previous footage that we just looked at, this was about the same maximum angle that he has. And here, he's got that maximum angle at the apex, on the apex. And then as we go forward, he slowly rolls that back out at the exit. So winding on the steering lock, winding it, gets about the max at the apex as you would want, and then starts rolling it back off. So if we go back and look at that defensive move again, we can see then that that's very different. This is about the closest he gets to the apex here, and he is just nowhere near the same steering angle as he is. So, I mean, obviously, you're putting less steering angle. That's going to run you wide compared to what we saw in the other footage, especially when you consider that Verstappen is on the inside here, so he's got a much smaller radius corner he needs to achieve anyway. So you would kind of expect to see more steering angle at this point compared to the other footage we just looked at, compared to the when he wasn't defending. You would expect to see more steering angle rather than less. So at the apex of the corner where Max is defending, we can clearly see that there's a lot less steering lock than we would normally see at this point in the corner. So that naturally is going to result in a wider turning circle and risking running wide. But when we move the footage forward, we do finally see the same steering as we would expect to see for this corner. This is pretty much the exact same steering lock we saw in the corner where Max was by himself, and this is what we saw at the apex. So clearly he does eventually need to get this amount of steering lock on just to make the corner. So you might say that based on the fact that he's not steering as hard here as maybe he should be, as it looks like he should be, you might say that he was already planning on running Hamilton wide out from this point in the corner. But the problem is we don't have our hands on the steering wheel. We don't know how much grip he's got on these front tires. It very well could be that if he puts any more steering lock on it at the speed that he's going here, he's just going to understeer and smash into Hamilton on the outside. So when you consider that they're both speeding into this corner as fast as they possibly can, both trying to be in front of the other, they're probably taking this corner faster than they normally would be, which of course would mean that you can't put any more steering lock into the corner at this time, and which the effect of that would be that you run out wider than you normally would, and then now we're, well, I don't know how many feet from the apex, but we're finally getting in the lock that you would need to make this corner. I don't know, 20 feet wide, 20 feet past where we would normally be here. So it basically meaning at this point we finally slowed down enough to make this corner. And then of course, well, it's kind of too little too late at that point. Really kind of almost nothing that Verstappen could do. I mean, if he tries to turn more, he's just going to oversteer and go out even wider. So I think what's really interesting about this angle is that it definitely doesn't show what everybody basically thought it was going to show, which was Hamilton opening up the wheel and pushing, which was Verstappen opening up the wheel and pushing Hamilton out wide. That doesn't necessarily mean that Verstappen doesn't deserve a penalty here. I don't really want to comment on that. That's a steward's decision. They've got a hard enough job. I don't know if he deserves a penalty or not. Verstappen, at least, was probably going a bit too, probably entered the corner with a bit too much speed, and had to turn in a little bit late. That's quite clear. Intentional, probably not. Whether or not it deserves a penalty is another thing, because you could say that he didn't take the corner properly. I haven't actually looked at Hamilton's onboard. It would probably show that he would have made the corner. I mean, you can even kind of see here, it looks like he had to turn out a little bit right there. So yeah, you could probably argue that Verstappen might have deserved a penalty. I don't know. But definitely what's quite clear is that he did not open up the steering wheel and push Hamilton out wide like everyone expected. That doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't push Hamilton out wide on purpose, and it doesn't necessarily mean that he did or didn't deserve a penalty. That's for you guys to decide, I suppose. Well, it's for the stewards to decide. But you all have opinions, I'm sure. I have opinions. You've heard them all. Speaking of my opinions, I did actually want to make a video like this last week regarding Verstappen overtaking Bottas on the outside of Turn 1 in the Mexican GP. That was a very contentious issue, and I thought I had a few thoughts, but I kind of got to it a little bit too late, and by the time I even got started with it, the Sao Paulo Grand Prix was already on. But I still have some thoughts, so if anybody wants to hear those, let me know, and I can make a very similar video to this one about that. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks for watching.